where there have been many conspiracy theories concerning pop stars and groups like the Illuminati as of recent, when one studies the deeper and more occult aspects of this phenomenon, they will find a remarkable synchronicity between many of these symbols and the mythology of the old world. Since the ancient times of Babylon, magicians and mystics have incorporated symbols not only as a method of branding and signaling to the initiated, but also with the belief that these symbols are actually magic sigils that are capable of harvesting spiritual energy. Well, that may sound like utter fantasy. I'm not here to cast judgment on the weird LARPing wizards. I've just got some cool texts and some cool pictures, and I'm going to show them to you. Cool. All right, let's get back to the cool voice. One of the most prevailing of these theories states that Masons and other secret societies embedded certain symbols that held an occult significance. For instance, the all-seeing eye, which is also called the Eye of Horus, represents the global hierarchy, with a small cadre of the illuminated being represented by the luminosity of the capstone. Horus, who was an ancient Egyptian deity like the all-seeing eye, dates all the way back to the great dynasties of this age. This symbol is most well known for being on the United States dollar bill, but it is located in many other places that makes it a little bit hard to chalk up simply to creative imitation and coincidence. Some are a little bit more blatant than others, but the amount of pyramid as well as eye symbolism in logos and other famous iconography is really something to behold. In addition to the United States dollar bill, the all-seeing eye is also on the Ukrainian hryvnia bill, as well as the logo for the MI5 British spy agency, and it's also on top of this Israeli courthouse. Oh, and it's also this magic charm that made the natives mistake Sean Connery for a god in the 1975 movie, The Man Who Would Be King, and on and on. I guess I should not leave out that this was also the symbol of the famously named, or perhaps infamously named, Order of the Illuminati, created by Adam Weishaupt in 1776. Oh yeah, and don't forget, it's also on the Communist Manifesto. So I'm sure that this movie about Sean Connery talking to strange foreign people has a heck of a lot to do with the philosophy of Karl Marx. I digress. One particularly interesting theory of note states that the modern secret societies are not just appropriating these symbols, but that this knowledge was actually passed down to them by the ancient mystery schools. Some believe that these mystery schools were home to sorcerers who held powerful, esoteric knowledge that allowed them to perform superhuman feats, such as astral projection and bringing the dead back to life. These magicians were known as the Jedi. Some believe that George Lucas' Jedi from Star Wars is actually based upon this.
Some have pointed out that there seems to be quite a bit of Egyptian mythology within the Star Wars universe, and particularly the reference to Jedi, because wasn't there an ancient Egyptian sort of knight class called Jedi, or Djedi?
There's a story called Khufu, Cheops. Khufu wants to summon to his court a magician named Jedi it's called the flint casket of Djehuti. Djehuti becomes in Greek Thoth, the god of cosmic wisdom.
Hermes Trismegistus later.
And becomes Hermes Trismegistus later, exactly. And it's the flint casket of Djedi contains the secret of the numbers. This gets really interesting in Pythagorean and so on, but that's where, well, I don't know if Lucas had read that there, but that's almost certainly where Jedi comes from.
There is a bigger body of knowledge writing about the Masonic origins of Star Wars than you might actually imagine.
It's again a mixture of all kinds of mythology and religious beliefs that have been amalgamated into the movie. I didn't want to invent a religion. I wanted to try to explain in a different way the religions that have already existed.
You're creating a new myth.
Well, I'm telling an old myth in a new way.
Also, to give credit where it's due, a lot of this comes from researcher Micahel Wynn, who was one of the first people, to my knowledge, to advance a lot of these theories. Another one of these esoteric symbols, often used by secret societies, but also used heavily in ancient Egypt, is the winged sun disk. The winged sun disk is believed by occult practitioners to represent Hermes, who is called Thoth in Egyptian lore, and who is also known as Hermes Trismegistus when he lived a supposed human life, and also wrote the Kybalion. Many people do believe that Hermes, the god, or so he would have you believe, was a real person. And the entire philosophy of the Kybalion, as well as the practice of Hermeticism, is based upon his teachings. Also, the word hermetic, as in hermetically sealed, is derived from the root word Hermes. As the mythos goes, Hermes, who was the messenger of the gods, was among the fastest of all the gods. And bearing this in mind, it is extremely curious that the winged sun disk seems to also appear in modern things that are implied to be fast as well. Furthermore, when the winged sun disk is paired with a double snake, it becomes the Caduceus, which is the international symbol for healthcare and medicine. But the Caduceus is also called the Rod of Hermes, and it is known as the instrument of pharmakia, which is another word for the sorcery of old. There do seem to be a whole lot of winged sun disks in very interesting places today. In addition to these, many of the esoteric symbols find their origin in the mythologies of old. For instance, another symbol that seems to repetitiously appear in strange places is the owl. Owls were often associated with the Greek goddess Athena, while others think that they might be symbolic of the more malevolent deity Moloch. Like the all-seeing eye, a very small image of an owl can also be found on the US dollar bill. There is also an owl in the seal of the National Press Club. Oh, and I think I'll include that some think that this same owl represents the same deity as the gigantic owl statue at Bohemian Grove. That's a really awkward sentence, sorry. I think you get the point. But if you're not aware, Bohemian Grove is a gigantic redwood forest in Northern California where people of influence secretly convene to sing merry songs and participate in a gigantic ritual called the cremation of care. Nothing weird about that, right? It's been going on for hundreds of years. So anyhow, moving on. Going back to my narrator voice. When we're on the subject of owls, it is also very strange that the gigantic outline of an owl exists in Washington, D.C., around the United States Capitol building, the very citadel of political power. It looks like this Capitol is indeed in the belly of the owl. Is that a stretch? When we're on the subject of DC, there's a lot of other funny and spooky stuff there as well. Also, If you look at the street plans, you will find a Masonic compass as well as the symbol that looks like an unfinished pentagram. And it's also a downwards pointing pentagram, which is usually the less nice version, generally speaking. There are some other funny things about Washington, D.C. as well. For instance, it exists outside of the surrounding legal construct that governs the rest of the nations, and it is packed with all sorts of weird mythological symbolism, including this big obelisk-looking thing called the Washington Monument. It's also another very interesting coincidence that the City of London as well as the Vatican have basically this same legal arrangement, and also a similar obsession with mythological symbolism, and all three of them have those darn crazy obelisks. And I don't think there's words that are capable of being arranged that YouTube will not punish me for if I try to tell you what it means. So, for what the obelisk actually symbolizes, use your imagination. Although this is a much deeper iceberg topic, I think I'm going to leave it there. What do you guys think? Do you think that this symbolism and the synchronicity of it indicates there's some secret society somehow at work here? Or is this just some sort of symbolism and people just seeing random things and having apophany-like theories? Let me know in the comments below.